hour. So let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining the CA UIM Best Practice Series webcast. Today I have on the phone with me Umar Khan, Jared Schrader, and Jake Meacham, and they're going to talk about custom app infrastructure discovery and monitoring configuration. Before I turn the call over to Umar, I would just like to say that everyone's lines have been placed on mute. We will take questions verbally via the phone line at the end of the presentation, but you can unmute your line by hitting *6 or #6 if you would like to ask your question on the telephone. If you would like to ask your question online, if you look to the upper right-hand part of the WebEx window, you'll see a Q&A box. You can ask questions using the Q&A box throughout the presentation, and we'll do the best we can to either answer them online or answer them verbally at the end. But we will be reading all of that Q&A. So at this time, I am going to turn the call over to Umar, who's going to say a few words, and then we'll begin the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Sue. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this monthly webcast series. I just wanted to set the context up straight. We heard from a lot of customers and partners like yourself that you guys wanted insights, especially from the engineering team and the product team, on using the product to its full potential, going beyond than the traditional monitoring, and really learning some of the best practices that the teams have learned across customers as well. So as part of that, we'll be doing it at least once a month, these best practice webcasts. If you have any more ideas, the topics you would like to cover, please send an email out to me, umair.khan@ca.com. My email address will be at the last slide as well. We are finalizing agenda for the follow-up webcast series. If you would like us to cover any particular topics, please type them in the chat window or send a note to me. Today's topic is around some of the new capabilities that came in UIM, Auto App Infra Discovery with 8.5.1 release, and I have some great speakers, both Gerard and Jacob, who will introduce themselves in a bit, and they'll take you through the process. How can you customize that auto discovery process to monitor your custom app infrastructure? Gerard?
Great, thanks, Umar. I got myself, Jared, and Jake Meacham in the room, and we were both the project manager and some developer on this project, so we'd be glad to walk you through the custom application infrastructure discovery and how to use it from a custom perspective. One of the things that we wanted to know is, out of the box, we have what UIM said was, the beginning and the starting, and they were mostly used for reference. The big power will come for when you guys can actually create your own applications, and that's what we're here to talk about. So hopefully after today's course, you'll be able to understand application discovery architecture from more of a technical deep dive, within UIM. Be able to describe some technical details around the application discovery feature, as well as create, and I think everybody wants to know how to create application discovery scripts and use them and group on them, and also to monitor those groups. And at the end, hopefully we'll give a little bit of troubleshooting, the MCS and the attribute publisher, the meat behind the discovery mechanism, and so that when you start writing your custom applications, that you have the tools to be able to understand, is it working as the way I expected or not?
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the slides first, and then we'll have some screenshots, and that's partially so we have, a record that you guys can look back on, and also just for just kind of a first run, we'll do it through the slides, and then hopefully after that we'll have a live demo for you guys to do the same thing on an actual system. So that's kind of the plan. We'll run through that.
So first we wanted to kind of highlight the application discovery architecture. So we don't want to go too much in depth in this, but this is in the slide deck.
And we can come back to this if there's specific questions on how the workflow works from a more technical perspective, but we kind of just wanted to have this in here and come back to it as needed rather than actually spend a whole lot of time here.
and the beauty behind this architecture is using a lot of the core components of UIM, a lot of the stuff, and it's just we stitched it together to make a full story that says here's how to now monitor, and go out and find and monitor custom applications or custom attributes. We wanted to call out a few general troubleshooting things ahead of everything because we wanted to put this in your face. Some of the most common things that we've found when writing a custom application to script, or when you think you've got everything working, there's just some nuances that you go, oh yeah, I forget. And these are just some of the high-level gotchas that as developers and testers we found were the top 4 problems. First one is that your scripts are to run on an interval, and we'll get into details, but the default is 1 day. It's customizable all the way up to, I believe, 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes is the fastest, and it will run the first time. So the first time you put a script out there, it will run, and then it'll start an interval after that. But a lot of customers will say, well, we've got this script, and then they'll put something out there, and then it doesn't get discovered. And it's like, well, your interval is a day, so it's just one of those things where you have to make sure the interval is correct.
But again, that's customizable. It's just keeping you informed. The other one is checking to make sure that the application process is started. So a lot of our basic scripts are based around processes or registry edits or other things that you just need to make sure that the actual service is started. So a lot of our scripts, you need to have it running. If for some reason it's down, it won't discover it. And again,
a lot of the reason we do that is, say you've got a bunch of systems that have Apache installed, but you're not ever running it, you probably don't want that to be discovered as an Apache system. So really, we only really wanted to use systems that were running the software that you were discovering, so you can say, oh, not only does this have it, but it's actually being used for that specific purpose.
Again, in the custom world, the beauty part is if you do care, you can actually go and take a look at general install locations on the file, see if they're there. You can enhance your scripts to go and check just beyond the processes part.
And you can even do things like attributes that aren't related necessarily to applications. So for example, you wanted to see if a system's like IPv6 enabled, you could go in and write a script that checks for IPv6 capability and then say, oh yeah, this is an IPv6 system. And so it's really flexible with the kinds of things that you can, really anything you can get from a script, you can publish as an attribute.
Yep. Other general troubleshooting stuff is this came in 8.5.1. The key pieces that we need to make sure is the Hub and Robot 790 is a minimum version because of the infrastructure behind it. And you also need this attribute publisher plugin, and those two kind of go hand in hand. And then application discovery scripts, again, we'll get into it. It's more of a special UIM package. That is the way we recommend for security reasons and for other reasons on how you manage and deploy using the custom application scripts. And the last thing, kind of I already touched on it, is the security check. So because this is UIM and it's part of your infrastructure, we've put this as part of the UIM security. So we'll show you the way to create the scripts, and it uses UIM internal security. Please make sure that you're not editing the file on the system after you've deployed it, because then that makes it invalid scripts, things of that nature.
So we've intentionally made it so you have to deploy it via a package in UIM so that you can't just have arbitrary scripts running on your system. It's got to be validated through UIM first. And so that's just a security measure, and as Jared said. So.
Okay. Part of this, I wanted to include the documentation links. There's the general using application discovery. That's just the high-level stuff, kind of gets you through a normal workflow. And then the other one is custom application discovery scripts. We're going to pull pieces from that documentation and kind of walk through, but we're going to walk through in more detail so you understand. But those are links that it's in the 851 documentation. So there's always reference there. So we're going to talk about a workflow, and we're going to call it Docker and Kubernetes. You know, UIM has Docker probe and does that, but a lot of the times you just don't know where they're at. Right. And as a customer, you both have Docker and Kubernetes installed somewhere and in your environment, and you'd be able to detect it and then monitor those applications. The solution is creating this custom application discovery script, custom groups, and then customized monitoring. So after this use case, you'll be able to write a custom application script, deploy that via a UIM package, create groups based on those published attributes, monitor via MCS from a custom group, and then view results in Cabbie. Again, this is the preferred method. There are many ways, and we'll touch on some of those different ways in the slides, but this is the preferred method to use this. Again, throughout this demo, you know, we've set up Docker already, but in the live demo, we'll go through Kubernetes, and so you'll see references to both Docker and Kubernetes in here. We kind of use them interchangeably as a reference. So starting off, everybody wants to know scripts. The high level is you can write the scripts in any language, but remember your robot has to support it. So we don't push anything special. We don't do anything special.
So out of the box, we support Batch for Windows and Shell for Unix and POSIX systems. But if you can do things like Python, provided you've got systems set up that run that stuff, and that's not supported on our side, but it's possible to do. It just needs to be able to echo stuff to standard out, and then we'll pick that up. With that said, things like Python and stuff are untested, but they should work. We supported explicitly Batch and Shell because we wanted to have, you know, a POSIX standard and then a Windows standard that should run on pretty much any robot you have. So that's why we made those two decisions. And yeah, basically what you want to do when you're creating one of these scripts is you want to echo kind of a key value pair. So you want to send something in your script that's a key name and then an equal sign and then a value. And when you send that out, the plugin will pick that up. When the plugin runs the script, it'll pick that up and send it basically send it to UIM, put it in the database where it can actually be used as an attribute for grouping. And so I've got some example scripts here. These are straight out of the documentation. But for example, if you look at the very bottom of your screen, there's looks like a batch script to determine the system architecture, whether it's a 32-bit or 64-bit system. And so, you know, it's just a pretty simple query in the registry to say, hey, what kind of architecture do I have? And then the key point is, if on that line right there, it basically says, if it's 32-bit, echo out, and then you'll see that sysarch, that's the key that we decided to name it, and then equals 32-bit. And 32-bit is kind of the value. And so that's then an attribute that will get picked up by the publisher and be usable as kind of a user property from the device context and the filtering properties in groups. So I think on the next slide we've got an example script for Kubernetes. Yep. Is that true? That's true. Yes. So this is the script that I wrote for Kubernetes. It's pretty simple. It just does this is for Linux. It runs a ps-ef to get a list of all the systems. It greps for kubectl, which is the Kubernetes process, and then it basically says if I find it, we'll echo out the role of Kubernetes and the version, and that's essentially it. And these scripts, I mean, you can write anything you want. They can be complex. They can be this simple. You just have to have a way of figuring out what it is you want to discover. So that's kind of the one that we wrote. And, you know, advanced users can write pretty much anything that they know how to script and then run that. And so
again, the highlight here is the echo statements to standard out. So do whatever black magic you want inside your scripts, and then whatever you echo out to standard out in a key value pair, those then become attributes. And you can have 1 to n number of attributes that you can publish. So the next step, after you've created your script, you need to create, and this is for the CFX file is for the security reasons. This is part of letting the pieces know, hey, this is okay to run. This is one of the many pieces in security.
Right. So what this does when you package it up is essentially modifies attribute publisher's config in a safe way rather than modifying it on disk. Again, this is so people can't just run arbitrary scripts. They've got to send down this configuration change through a package securely to actually make that change. So in this case, what we've done, you can kind of just use this as a template, and there's already some CFX files in the script packages that come out of the box with UIM. But you can kind of just use this as a template, and essentially what you want to do is change the file name to whatever the file name of your script is. You can leave the shell or batch extension off if you're using one of those two. We automatically will append it on Windows or Linux, so you can just give it the file name without any extension. And then we recommend doing the same thing with the section header around it in XML, just for keeping things clean and nice. Just give it the same name. And this will essentially modify the config for Attribute Publisher to say, hey, here's a new script I want you to run.
Again, to reiterate, I know some people can go in and modify CFGs and CFX files for the Attribute Publisher by hand. That is not okay in this instance,
right,
because it won't be secure, and therefore your new script won't run. So yes, this is the way to make your scripts secure and be able to be run by the new Attribute Publisher.
So now we've got those two things created, we're going to actually create the package in UIM that we're going to deploy. So for those of you that have created packages before, it's pretty much the same thing. For those of you that haven't, don't worry, we're going to go through it right now. It's pretty straightforward. So what you're going to want to do is use Infrastructure Manager and go to your archive. And from there, you'll just want to right-click and click New, and that's going to get you a new package that you can create. And so when you do that, you'll get some window, looks a lot like this, and you just have to fill in the name, the description, and the group. The name is pretty easy. The name is just going to be the same as your file name. You can name it something else, but we recommend keeping it consistent. That's a good practice. Give the description if you want to, and then you'll want to put it under the infrastructure group. That's not in the drop-down, but you can just type it in there, and that'll be the correct group. The other stuff you can change if you want, but you don't have to. So for example, the version and the build number, if you have newer versions of scripts, you can change those. I just leave them at 1.0 because it's typically the first version of the script that you're adding. You can use those if you want to, but there's no need to modify anything other than those three fields. So what you then want to do is we're going to add a section which allows you to then add some files to it. So we're going to create a section. We're going to base these on operating systems. You can base them on other things, but it's typically a good idea to base them on operating systems because that's how they get installed on the system. So you're just going to right-click on that little tab there and click Add Section, and that's going to get you a new one. And then you'll give it a name. I chose Linux because it's going to be for Linux systems. And then just click OK, and that gives you a new section. You can kind of see that tab now at the top. And we'll do all this live, and we're just kind of going through the slides right now to give you an idea of how we do this. So you'll want to change the OS type and the OS. If you just set the OS type, that's fine. It will then say, okay, I'm going to just try to deploy this to all Unix flavors. You just have to, remember that, hey, it's going on to all Unix flavors, and so if you use something like Bash, it might not run on all of your OSs if they're not set up to run Bash. So in this case, I chose Linux 23, which is just, the standard Linux flavor for CentOS and Red Hat and those kinds of things. But you can choose whatever makes sense. You can choose multiple if you want to have both a batch and a shell to discover on Windows and Linux. You can create multiple sections and do all that. So now that we've got a section that says, here's the OS I want to install this package on, you'll just add a file. So you're going to right-click in that empty space there under the Files tab and click Add File. And then you'll browse to the script and the CFX file you wrote. So for the first case, we're looking for the script. So you're going to click Browse, and then you're going to click to, go back, sure, yes, it's all good. You're going to click to the app disco Kubernetes shell script that we wrote and you'll click that, and you'll hit OK in the browsing window. And once you do that, you'll then have to change the path. Now, the default path is going to be something like the probes path, which is not where you want this to go. You want this to go to the path seen there. So by default, it's going to, the path that you want to put in there is going to be the, whatever your nim install directory is will automatically be included. So you just want to say plugins / attribute publisher / custom scripts, just like the way it is on this slide. The install directory is implied is added to the front of the path at the beginning. If you move your attribute publisher somewhere else because you've got some kind of custom file architecture, you just have to make sure you update this path to reflect that custom architecture. We don't recommend that because it can cause some pathing issues with robot, but if that's something that you are comfortable doing and you like to do as an advanced user, we have it as an option to put whatever path you want in there. Then you'll click OK to say, all right, this is the file I want, and this is where I want it to be placed when the package installs. And then we're going to do basically the same thing to the CFX file. We're going to click in the empty space and click Add File, right-click in the empty space. Then we're going to browse to wherever our CFX file is. In this case, I put it in the same folder for ease of use. And then basically you're going to want to say, all right, the path for this time is plugin / attribute publisher without the custom scripts, because this is going to be modifying the actual config of the attribute publisher. So you want to put it in the same directory that attribute publisher is in. So that path right there, again, plugin / attribute publisher is where you want the path for your CFX file. And then you'll want to click OK again. And what that does is now you've got all the files that you want, your name and everything else set up. The last thing you need to do, and this is really important, this is probably the most important part about creating a package, is you have to add a dependency on attribute publisher. Otherwise, UIM doesn't really understand that these scripts are related to attribute publisher. So you have to do this, and this is kind of the final step in creating a package. So what you want to do is you want to click on the Dependencies tab. And unfortunately, it looks like it already had it there. Typically, it won't. Just a poor screenshot on my part. But you'll want to right-click in the empty space and click Add Dependency. And from there, you'll have to put this in. Again, it's not going to be in the drop-down menu, but you can type it. So you'll want to type attr_publisher, which is the attribute publisher name, and then whatever version of attribute publisher you want this to run on. That's going to be the minimum version that you want it to run on. As of right now, that version is 7.90. But in the future, if you have scripts that are like, oh, I only want this script to run on my new robots, you can change that version to like 7.91 or whatever when those robots come out. If they come out, you can then just say, okay, let's go ahead and modify the version to be whatever I want. By default, greater than or equal to will be selected in the type. You shouldn't have to change that, but if you do notice it's not, just set it to greater than or equal to, and that'll allow any future attribute publisher versions to run your scripts, so you won't have to worry about it when you upgrade. And that's it to create the package. You'll just want to click OK in the package creation window, and that'll say, that'll create a new package for you in the archive. You can see it right there, app disco Kubernetes. It's got our description. And so now we kind of want to get into how do we deploy these packages? What are the different ways we can deploy them? So the first way we're going to show you is kind of a one-time deployment. It's not the recommended way to deploy these things because it's only going to work for, you know, a single robot or a single hub, and it's not going to be scalable. But it's good for things like testing. Say, I just want to see if the script works, so I'm going to put it on one robot to test it. But it's not going to be good for complex or long-running deployments. So basically, all you really have to do is drop it on like any other package. You just click and drag it onto your robot. Once this is in your archive, I believe you can also do it from the Internet Archive, but you might as well do it in Infrastructure Manager since you're here. So that's what we've done here. This is the one-time deployment. Drop it on like any other probe, and it'll run. But the preferred way to do this is actually via MCS. And the reason for that is MCS can do a lot of really cool automatic stuff. And so if I have a group of systems that I have set up for application discovery, I've got a bunch of 790 robots, I can say, all right, I want this group to automatically deploy this script. So any system that gets added into that group or any system that's in that group by the start, whatever, if anything changes about that group, this script will automatically get deployed. You won't have to touch it. It'll just do it, automatically for you. And so this is the recommended for like dynamic deployment, or once you've tested a script and you understand how it works, this is the way you're going to want to deploy it. So you'll just want to create a group or choose one that we already have. We've got a couple different groups you can choose from.
Yep, and the recommended one is, if you're using the regular app discovery group, there's already built in, there's one that's called Setup Application Discovery, and we'll show that in the live demo. That's the one that already has a query filter that says you need robot 790 to be populated in here. So we recommend using that one just because it's already, ready for you, set up for you. But you can use the operating systems group that you normally get as well, or other customized groups that you create.
If there's certain systems you want to be, not running application discovery, you can create custom groups that say, I only want these systems to run these scripts and that kind of thing. But in general, yeah, the proven method and the method that works the best and that we've kind of already set up for you is that Setup Application Discovery group, which should by default contain all the 790 robots that we've found on your deployment. And so once you choose that group that you want to use, you're going to want to go to the Monitoring tab. And the Monitoring tab is basically just the MCS UI. So you want to click on that tab, and then you'll see a MCS template called Application Discovery Scripts. And you'll want to just add a new profile there. So you'll click the plus button next to that template to add a profile. When you do that, it gives you a pretty small interface. There's only 3 options. The package name and the script file name should match the package name and the script file name you chose in the earlier steps. So this is another reason why you kind of want to keep those things the same if you can, because now your profile is going to look nice and clean. All you have to do is put in that same string that you put into those other 2 places, and it'll work just fine. And then the last thing you want to choose is an interval. That'll decide how often this script runs. A day is typically fine. We've provided faster intervals in case you want to do quicker discovery of these systems. If you've got like a really dynamic environment with a lot of VMs that you really want to make sure those applications are discovered as they come up and are torn down, then you may want to choose a shorter interval. But a day is, for most deployments works pretty good, and I think a day is the default. And so that's pretty simple. Just put in those 3 values, and you can leave off the file extension again, just like you would in the config, the CFX file we had you create earlier, and then you just create the profile. So once you do that, the scripts are now going to be run on all 7.90 and greater robots in the group. And additional, as I said before, additional systems that are added to that group, we're going to automatically deploy that script. And so if any systems in that group in the future begin running an application, we will discover it automatically. We'll say, it was in this group, it was running the script, and now we've found it and discovered it. So that's kind of how you get from creating a script to publishing an attribute that you can use. So you can kind of think of that as kind of the first block of stuff that you need to do. And now we have to actually create a group that uses that attribute. And when we create that group, essentially there's 2 different methods to do it. The first one is using advanced attributes. Those are the attributes that the publisher is publishing. And in order to use that method, the attribute publisher has to have at least once published an attribute. And the reason for that is if it's never published an attribute, there's no systems that actually have that attribute. So if you aren't running any Apache systems and you run Apache Discovery, that key is not going to show up because you've never found any. So you've got to find at least one system that matches your script's criteria. And then the second one is for more advanced users that are comfortable writing SQL. You can write whatever SQL script you want. There's one that's provided here that's kind of the standard to just get you whatever your attribute is if you publish it with the roles key. And so this is kind of the standard script you would run, but you can get wild with these. You can do whatever makes sense for your environment. Method 1, again, the preferred method, but method 2 for advanced users, we have that option available. So to create the group, you're going to use the standard group creation in UMP that all of us know and love. So you're going to go to the groups in your hierarchy, wherever you want this group located. You're going to click the plus button. For the purposes of this demo, I just did it at the top layer, but you can put this group wherever you want. So I'm going to click that, and then we'll go to the filters at the bottom of the group, and we're going to go to the bottom of that drop-down where there's an advanced tag. So that's what we're going to click. And then that provides us an edit button that we can then select which attribute we want to publish. So we're going to click that edit button. And when we do that, we're going to scroll again all the way to the bottom, and that's where you're going to see, I think it's alphabetical, but they're going to be at the bottom unless you've got something that's, you know, later in the alphabet than you. But all of your properties, you'll notice, will have this user props MV appended to the front, and that's just to designate that this is a multi-value user property. You don't really need to know what that means. Just know that anything that's published as a user property will have that user property prefix appended. And the nice thing about that is now all the properties you publish are going to be in the same place, essentially, in your dropdown. So you'll have a list of all of them in your dropdown with that prefix, so you can access them in one nice block. So we're going to go ahead and click this one. In the UI, if you hover over this, it'll give you the full name, so don't worry that it gets cut off. You'll be able to see the whole thing. And that's the Docker one. And so we've set it to roles is Docker. So you can see in that filter, we put Docker in the value for that filter. So now anything that has a role of Docker will show up. And so then we click Apply Filters just to say, just to see if this group is actually working correctly, like it's intended. And sure enough, we can see that the demo test system, which is the one running the Docker script, shows up. And then we're going to click OK to create that group because we're happy with it.
One too far. Hold on.
That's okay. Yeah, and so you can see where that group was created. And again, we'll do all this live for Kubernetes. We're doing Docker right now just for the purposes of having this all down. But you'll be able to see all this stuff live, so we'll run through all these steps again. And finally now, you get to the fun part where you can use this group to monitor, to create whatever MCS configuration you want. I'm going to turn it over to Jared to talk about some of that stuff.
So there's just general two methods, just talking about, using the current application of probes, so there's Docker probe out there with a Docker MCS, a template out there, there's, or whatever, sometimes we have the probe, sometimes we have the templates, sometimes we don't. So that's method two. Method two is just make stuff up as you go. And that seems to do, because ultimately you want to look at the system, the box, the device that it's running on. And a lot of the common defaults are, using MCS as memory, CPU, processors, and disks. And instead of monitoring it at the device level, you now have this wonderful group that you can just monitor from at the group level. So you can you can start seeing that. I went through, and we'll go through it real briefly, but we'll high level it here. But just creating default disk, setting up your profile, creating memory, setting up your profile, creating your CPU, setting up your profile. You can get wild and crazy with it, but now you have it. Once you get that set up, once it's monitoring, you can actually use the default Cabbie. Default Cabbie has a summary page, and then it has default groups. And these groups, as soon as because you created a USM group, they'll start showing up in your group, and now you have Cabbie Reports by default that now you can drill into and look at your alarms, look at your metrics, look at, details in there. So we've tied it, we've stitched all of this together so that you now can use Cabbie, MCS, and this custom application group, and you get, a high-level view of your new application group.
And the real beauty of this is that any time a new 790 robot comes online, if you set up monitoring on that set up application discovery group, if you've set up the script on that group, it's going to automatically do application discovery on that new robot. So anytime you add a new robot, you're automatically going to get this stuff. It's going to go ahead and say, I'm going to find all the applications on that new robot, I'm going to start monitoring them, and I'm going to get Cabbie Dashboards. So you don't have to, once you have this set up, you don't have to touch it. Any new robots that get added to the groups that you've added that script to are automatically going to get all this monitoring for free.
So if you do it our preferred method, again, to Jake's point, is you do a lot of work up front, but then it becomes free or relatively free from that point on. And that's the beauty of this workflow. Before we get into the demo, we wanted to highlight a few things to note. You know, the top one we've already kind of talked about. You know, you can use, a lot of people can use this in a lot of different ways to bundle it up, to show what their customers are using, what their environments are using. The highlight we wanted to say is this is, despite application discovery, it's not limited to just figuring out applications. As we've already talked about, this is whatever custom attribute or attributes that you want to group on at your site, whatever you see most important that you can figure out from a script. This workflow provides that power.
All right, so some ideas just up front to get you started. You know, I want to know what all my IPv6 systems are, so I'll write a script that searches for IPv6 and sends that out. Or maybe I want to know, you know, which of my systems have certain configuration if you've got a custom application with a configuration, you want to create groups based on certain config variables. If you can write a script to mine that config, you can do all that. And this also provides, the other thing we wanted to highlight is MSPs. I don't know if there are any MSPs on the call right now, but it provides a really nice way to give access to customers to things that they've never monitored previously. So they can say, hey, customers, we've got this great new script that we wrote, and we're going to automatically deploy it, and you're going to get all this stuff for free. And the customers that are you know, working under that MSP don't have to touch anything. They just automatically get all this monitoring. So it's really powerful for MSPs as well to use.
Right. And that brought up a good point. As we're doing all this, please remember this is not a tenant type thing that can you do this. This is an Nimbus user. This is an administrator level type piece because of the security pieces behind it, because of all of this. So please note that this was not to turn out to your customers so that they can do this. And when you roll it out, you know, depending on how you set up your groups, potentially you could be rolling it out to all tenants.
Right.
So please be aware of that as well. And then another thing to note is grace period. So there's built-in grace periods. So meaning, you know, if you're checking processes or you're checking a certain thing and it doesn't show up for a day or 2 days, it's customizable, and we can show you where it's customizable.
Yeah.
But the point is after a certain period of time, you want to account for your maintenance windows, or you want to account for maybe it went down for a couple hours, but it was doing a therapeutic restart, or whatever you had on there. You can set your grace period to say, oh, I want you to age yourself out of this group after
3 days.
3 days is the default. Yeah. But you can set that default to something else depending on if your maintenance window is longer and it's down or whatever. So please know that grace period is also applicable.
So you won't have to worry about systems bouncing in and out of groups as they go down. They'll stay, unless you modify that grace period, they'll stay in there for, you know, however long until they get aged out.
So that, I think that is it. Is that? And then at the end here, we added an attribute publisher troubleshooting. So we'll kind of go through, you know, in a live system to show you where some of these are at and what you might be looking for. But for general reference, you know, log locations for the plugins. So the attribute publisher is actually rolled up into the controller ext log. So there's not an attribute publisher log. So please note that.
All controller plugins will log to the same log file, which right now I think is just the attribute publisher plugin. But in the future, it may have multiple plugins using that log file. We're not really sure how that's going to go. But.
Yeah. Again, to see your CFX file that you added, that actually they got into the CFG file, you can view the attribute publisher.cfg, but please remember, do not modify this on disk. This is a
if you want to look at what your configuration looks like, you can do that. But yeah, again, scripts and config, we've intentionally made those not modifiable on disk to avoid, you know, any security breaches. So you just can't do it. And that it's, you know, if you would like to do these kinds of things, you want to change the way a script runs, it's pretty easy. You go into your package, you edit it, you change the file, or you update the file, and then you send that package back out. And if you edit that package, and it's an MCS package that we've enabled through step 4, when you edit that package, any new deployments are automatically going to contain that edit.
And then just last piece, just so you know, you can actually see if your script gets put onto the robot. You can find them in this attribute custom scripts directory. And again, please don't modify them on disk. You can, you can read them. You can read them. Look at them. You can look at them. Yeah. But this is where they actually get put down. So from that point, we will now, hopefully I can share my screen to do the live demo of what we just talked about. And again, I want to do it live, so let's see. So I won't ban through a lot of the points, but so first off, we're going to look at Kubernetes now. And again, here's the Kubernetes script. Can you guys see my, can someone see my screen? Hopefully.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So we're going to go with Kubernetes. And again, this is very simple, very similar to the Docker. Again, we're going to look at process. We're going to just focus on Linux. Again, batches, relatively the same version. But again, in this, we're going to look at, look for this kubectl process. And if it's there, we're going to publish a role key value pair. So role equals Kubernetes. We're going to do some further checking to see, well, you want to know what version this is, so we'll check what version, and it'll also echo the version out. So again, we're going to find, hey, is this Kubernetes? And oh yeah, what version is this? Again, this is where you can create custom groups based on Kubernetes, and then subgroups of maybe, Kubernetes version, X.
Whatever you want to. However
you want to write your custom filters for your groups. So again, that's the power behind it. And the attribute publisher CFX file, again, very generic, very plain. Again, we modified it to say appdisco Kubernetes, which is the file name for the shell script, and as well as file name equals appdisco Kubernetes. Again, keep it simple, keep it the same. So we've created these two files. The next step is to log into IM on your, well, we did it on our primary hub. In the infrastructure archive section, click down here to infrastructure. Over here, right-click, new. And pop up the new package. And this one we're going to call appdisco Kubernetes. Big, please. You got it. Got it. Okay, great. Description, custom, appdisco script, infrastructure. Again, as mentioned before, you can modify it. Then you click here to add a section, right-click, add section, name, we'll call this one Linux. It creates and opens up in this files. We want to upload both our script and our CFX, so right-click, add file, browse. So here's my Kubernetes script. Again, it defaulted to a path that I don't want. So it's plugins, adder, publisher, custom scripts. Correct, Jake?
Yes.
And again, you want to add the CFX file. So we'll browse to the CFX file. Again, modify the, what? Was it 2 or 3? I believe it was 2. Ah, perfect, 2. Plugins, adder, publisher. Again, this is where the attribute publisher lives.
We want to change the OS type to Unix.
OS type, Thank you, forgot that one. And I'll leave the OS blank so it runs everywhere.
We just add the dependency.
And then the last piece is we add dependency. Again, click the dependency tab, right click and then add dependency. Again, you have to type it, adder_publisher, version 7.90, greater than, equal to, click OK. And that's as simple as creating a new package. Click OK.
And again, you can add extra sections if you want to do a Windows component to it as well. Kubernetes is Linux only, so we're not showing you that. But if you've got something that runs on both Linux and Windows, you can just add another section here.
Yep. So again, up here, if you wanted to add section, you can add a section. Call it
just cancel that.
Windows or whatever,
but yeah.
and upload your Windows version. So instead of the .shell, you can do the batch script or whatever. Or if you want to break out different runnings of your Unix flavors, you want to find it. You know, sometimes some applications check certain processes than others depending on your flavor.
Right.
So you can break it up in section names. So typical sections are Windows and Linux or Unix, but in Kubernetes, it's only in Unix, so we'll only focus there. And again, you've already seen it fell into my infrastructure piece. It's a package. It's called Aptisco Kubernetes. You need to do modifications. You can edit it just like that, and it'll pull it up, and then you can modify it again. If you need to, you can modify it. In here, you can modify the file properties. You can add more files, or you can edit the file and click OK. But again, you see that file is exactly what we wanted it to be. Again, the one time is simply taking this package and then dropping it onto, drag and dropping it onto a hub or to a specific test machine or whatever. But that's creating a package. The next step, that's creating a package with your scripts and your CFX file. So now you have a package that you can actually deploy. So next step is logging into your hub. And again, for those that don't know how to use a regular app discovery piece, to enable it, you click to get some of these Unix pieces, this Application Discovery Unix and Application Discovery Windows. This is the preferred groups that we recommend. This is the setup application discovery. You actually look at the underlying query underneath it.
You need it on the specific
I need it on the specific operating system. So if you look at the specific query, this one does, where robot is greater than 7.8. So it's not greater than or equal to, but it's greater than 7.8. So it's already got a special query, and again, you can already see it's populated with a subset. I've got 5 Unix systems. One of them doesn't have 7.90 or greater, so only 4 show up. So we're going to use Setup Application Discovery Group to now deploy it. So I know I want to go to Unix group, go to my monitoring tab. If you've used the regular application discovery, you'll see whatever, in this case it was Apache, MySQL, and Oracle. You can see we've already have an Aptisco Docker. But again, it's as simple as adding a profile. And then again, this is where you add your Aptisco Kubernetes. And again, if you've kept this all the same, this should be very straightforward. And then again, here's where you can set how often you want to run it, every hour, 4 hours, once a day, twice a day. For the sake of this, we'll just say every 15 minutes. You hit create, and that's it. That's now your script's going to be pushed out. Anytime a new robot comes into this group, your script now gets pushed out via MCS. So Again, if you want to modify your interval, you can come in here and modify your interval. This will show up once it's deployed that you can actually modify it. Again, the next step, so now you've got the script that's going to be pushed out to all my robots. So pretty soon here I should be able to go onto my robot and I should be able to see the script that got pushed down all the way. And then again, Jake mentioned that it executes on the first iteration. So once it gets pushed down, it executes and then it waits that interval and then executes again. So we'll show that here in a minute. But to continue with the workflow, for me, I decided to keep it under the App Discovery, Discovered Applications group. I want to create a new one. I want to call it Custom Kubernetes Group. And again, the Custom Kubernetes Group. And again, down here at your filters, you click what filter, you go down to the very bottom, Advanced tab. Again, you select that filter, scroll to the bottom, and you have one that's already been discovered. Again, if you don't see what you were expecting, you might have to wait a couple of minutes for it to get populated into the database to go through the full cycle, but this one was. So you click that and change the null, to where it says this property, this key is equal to what is it?
Kubernetes.
Kubernetes. Okay.
So if I click Apply Filters.
Click Apply Filters, and there's Demo Text. So found one system that has it. Click OK. Now your custom group gets custom system. Again, this one has Docker and Kubernetes on there, so the power then becomes, okay, I want to monitor this with, some other NCS templates. You want a CPU monitor. I'll just use the defaults. Send me a couple of alarms if they breach. Create. I want to do default disks as well to these systems.
And while he's setting these up, the cool thing, again, is any future robots that start running Kubernetes or Docker will automatically be put into those groups and automatically get all this monitoring that we're set up. So you won't have to touch, once a new system comes in that has some application running, it'll automatically go into these groups and get that monitoring and be visible in Cabbie.
So, and then the last part I wanted, assume everything's been looking, we'll take a look at the custom Docker group that's been running for a little while. So if you go into, and you go to Unified Dashboards, Cabbie Dashboards, and the Dashboard Summary page, this is what, the UIM view would be. But notice in this top groups by alarm section, and you can modify it too. You'll see that there's, where I put it in Discovered Application System, there's a custom Docker group. And you go to that custom Docker group, and all the monitoring I set up via MCS now gets shown in this page as it's loading. And you can start seeing all your details that you want to see based on that group. And then you can drill in and look at metrics and look at all of your alarms and looking at the other piece. So that is the end-to-end view of finding attributes, grouping on them, monitoring them, and viewing the results. So that's the end of the demo. Anything else you want to add, Jake?
Not that I can think of. No, I think we just about covered it. The few pieces that I wanted to share with you is a little bit of troubleshooting stuff. Sorry if it's hard to read, unfortunately. This is a robot, one of the robots that was found. I'm in the op-minsoft plugins attribute directory, and you can see you've got my CFX files for both Docker and Kubernetes. You can see all of the different ones, and you can see
Docker's in there, and
I don't think we added Kubernetes to this one.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't add Kubernetes to this one, but and if you go to the custom scripts directory, you'll see, you'll see Apache, Docker, Kubernetes. The script that actually got pushed down to the down to the system and it ran. Other things you'll notice in this directory is a state file that was not mentioned, but if you just kept, I got to go back at the directory. In the attribute publisher, you can look at the state file, and this just kind of shows at a high level.
And this is more advanced stuff. I mean, these are things that if something's
wonky,
if you're confused about something, you can try to look at some of these things. I mean, it's more advanced stuff, but we just want to show you where it is, so you can do this kind of troubleshooting if you're a more advanced user and you understand some of these things, config files and scripts, and you want to get a better look at the log or whatever, just show you where all those things are.
And again, it's and the log, one of the attribute publisher log file is back a directory in the robot directory, and there's the controller_ext log, and
which is empty because we have it set to level 0. So
yeah,
if you change the log level, it will show all sorts of lovely logging there.
And please note that change the log level on the robot.
Yes, on the controller.
Yeah, on the controller. So it's not the attribute publisher log level; it's the robot log level. But those are the high-level pieces to take a look at. And of course, the Windows side is relatively the same.
Right.
Pathing is the same. So that's it. I guess we can turn it over to questions.
Yeah, so there are a few questions that came into the Q&A before we open it up to the phone line. And I'll just read them out to you. What is the status of UIM supporting TLS 1.2 for SQL Server QoS database?
That's a higher level question.
Is that a roadmap question?
That's a roadmap question.
So I can half answer, not the question to the question, but I can tell you that later this month there is a UIM roadmap session. You can go to, it's posted on the UIM community. It's also, if you go to ca.com/roadmaps, you can see the roadmap sessions and join one of them. Perhaps your question can be answered there. The other question is, the application discovery looks great. Great, does it work on AS400 systems?
I'm sorry, which systems?
The AS400, so yes, we have the attribute publisher is supported on all robot platforms, and I believe the AS400 is a supported version for attribute publisher. We will have to double check with that.
Yeah, I'm not certain. Essentially, if you want to check for yourself, or we can get back to you on this as well. But essentially, any OS that's supported by a 7.90 robot will also support the attribute publisher. So
that's why I said originally yes. And I know we've done some testing, but I don't know to what granular level that we have. We've tested the AS400, but it should be supported.
Okay, thank you. There's two more questions that I see here. Is there a way to see custom attributes, user prop MV, in parentheses, directly in USM group as a column?
I don't believe there's a way to see it as a column, but you can see it in those filters if you open up the group and you look at the the filtering on that group in the edit field for that group. You'll be able to see all the properties there that you've selected. You can also, if you're more like a power user, you can see them in the database.
Great.
So yeah, they will show up in the filters on that group.
Terrific. Okay, so the other question is, this focuses on Docker /Kubernetes, but I can extend this to any, but can I extend this to any application in my environment?
Yes.
Yes. Any application that you can write a script for to discover, you'll be able to discover. So basically anything that has a process that's running or anything else that you can write a script, you can find it. And that includes even things that aren't applications, like going through your registry and picking out certain registry keys to tell you if it's 32-bit or 64-bit or IPv6 enabled. Pretty much the only limitation to this is your ability to write a script. It's basically, you can write a script for it, you can discover it. And those scripts are, they're shell or batch, so they're fully extensible. And if you've got any script developers on site or developers that understand these languages, they can write a script for anything you want.
Great, thank you. And then the final question, I know we're at the top of the hour here, is can you give a quick example of Windows script to detect, say, Exchange service, tongue-tied?
I think we may actually have, let me check on my system. I think I may actually have one that does Exchange server.
You have that.
I'm going to look. I think I might have one.
And then while you're looking, and again, I know we need to wrap it up, there was one question I don't think that I read. Do your custom attributes show up in the UI anywhere or just in the database, in the DB?
They will show up in the UI in the filter criteria for that group under the Advanced Attributes tab that we showed. They'll have under that Advanced Attributes list in the UI, you'll be able to see every single attribute that you've published. So if you want, actually, you can go back to show where that is, or it's also in the PowerPoint.
You want me to go back to the?
Yeah, just to show where it's at, and I'm pulling up. I do have one for Exchange server. I don't know how we knew it.
Again, the only easy way is underneath this custom filter, and you'll notice that there's user prop NV that shows up for Docker and Kubernetes. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no other easy way to look at all of your, no other out of the box easy way to look for these. But again, you could create something very simple. A dashboard, a Cabbie dashboard, or something of that nature that would be able to query your database results. These user prop NV properties, I want to make note, they end up in the custom or in the attribute section on the device. So they end up on a device. This what is it? CM attribute. Do you remember the table?
CM. If you open up the SQL criteria, it'll give you the first one.
Let me pull up the SQL criteria. But so
my notepad thinks it's on the other monitor right now. I can open it in something else.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So please remember, it's under CM Computer System and System Attribute tables. So that's a more in-depth place to look, but unfortunately, those are the two places.
Okay, great. And I'm going to post this so they can always go back to it. Well, we are 3 minutes past the hour, so we should probably wrap up the call. Are you guys good with that?
I think so. I've got an Exchange server example if we want to just show that.
Okay, if you want to look that quick, sure. And then while you're getting that, I don't know if this is easy to answer. The only other final question I see is, do you have a shared area with user/vendor community scripts? Hello? think my phone just went out.
I think they're on mute. Guys, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I think my phone, I thought my phone went. Yeah, you guys must be on mute. #6 or *6, because we couldn't, I thought it was me. Actually, the phone might have hosed up for a second because the time started stopping on it. We can hear you now.
Okay, so this is an example that I'm full disclosure, I don't know if this works correctly or not because it's been a while since we looked at this script. This was just kind of an example that I made a while ago. But I think it will work, and this is just an example of one that we've written for Exchange Server, just to give you another idea of you can write these scripts for just about anything. And so this one is asking basically asking the Microsoft Exchange Server host if Exchange is there. And if it sends an error so that the service isn't accessible, then we won't echo anything. Otherwise, we'll send out this key name. So like I said, I have no idea if this works just because it's been so long since I've run it, but it's an example that I can give you guys to at least show you what it might look like to discover Exchange Server. So there you go. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Cool.
So we are at 12:06, so I'll wrap this up. Any questions that we weren't able to ask? I know there's the one shared area with the user and vendor community scripts. You guys went on mute. I don't know if you answered it, but I'm going to capture the Q&A and the chat, and I will give it to our presenters. So anyone that didn't get answered, they can respond to you via email. In the meanwhile, thank you all for joining the call. We appreciate your time, and I will be posting the recording of this event along with the presentation slides out to the UIM community, and you should see that later today or early tomorrow morning. So thank you again for joining, and have a great rest of your afternoon, evening, morning. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Frank.